Cory Aquino stole the presidency of 1986. Ferdinand Marcos was the duly elected president of that snap elections of that year. The winning margin of President Marcos was more than 1 million votes. Marcos was proclaimed the winner by the Philippine Congress and sworn into office by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Before, we used to say that being president is to a certain extent about character. We can say that being president of this country is entirely about character. Government is choosing. Government is prioritizing. And during his watch, President Ferdinand Marcos cannot always be on the right. He must take up matters as a whole to make things perfect for the country, and not only for the foreign hands that have always been manipulating us. Marcos knew then that the international proponents of free trade did not conceal their underlying and motivating belief that the nation-state is obsolete and the whole world must be transformed into a global village, where a nation's economic sovereignty is surrendered to those who run the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization. With his wife Imelda by his side, Ferdinand proved to be a dynamic, innovative, and forward-looking leader with self-sufficiency for the country as his immediate goal. He laid down the foundations of the nation's economic infrastructure by building more and better national roads, bridges, public edifices, which he later dubbed as concrete monuments to progress. In order to make Ferdinand's dream house a home, Imelda reflected, what makes a home? Love. And what is love made real? Beauty. What was the beautiful tradition, values, art that we had as a people? So Imelda built the Cultural Center of the Philippines to be a monument to the Filipino spirit, to give standard, to give identity, because there was a crisis of identity for Filipinos. This was followed by the Folk Arts Theater, the Institute of Arts in Makiling, the Philippine International Convention Center. As time passed, they forgot how Marcos tried to control the prices of oil and other commodities, and struggled to put up industrial projects that could have given more jobs and lifted the nation's economy. Imelda had to face the trial of the century in New York, charged with stealing $43 billion from the coffers of the government, when the nation's budget for 20 years of Marcos' rule reached up to only $32 billion. Simple arithmetic. With his meager Ilocano budget, as it were, President Marcos embarked on a massive buildup of roads, bridges, and other infrastructure projects meant for the betterment of the country's economic structure. Sad to say, the succeeding presidents had little to show, despite their huge benefits. A summary of government expenditures from 1966 to 1997. Number 1. President Ferdinand Edralin Marcos, 1965 to 1986, 20 years, 486 billion, 273 million. Number 2, President Corazon Aquino, 1986 to 1991, 6 years, 1 trillion, 77 billion, 895 million. Number 3, President Fidel Ramos, 1992 to 1997, 6 years, 2 trillion, 237 billion, 907 million, from the National Statistics Office. On the core of the family, which is the barangay, he made the political system more grassroots and extensive by adopting the barangay system, which enabled the smallest units of the system, to which the core is the family, to participate in the democratic process by making them responsible for administrative and legal functions within their barangay. The barangay leaders and officers were made elective in their respective communities. It was through the barangay where his concept of a participatory democracy found its tangible roots. When the first barangay election was held at a time when the country only had a population of 51 million, 3 million were elected to represent 42,000 barangays. Serving as a co-pillar to the democratic vision of President Marcos was the creation of the Ministry of Human Settlements and entrusted to his wife, the First Lady, Imelda Marcos. As Governor of Metro Manila and Minister of Human Settlements, Mrs. Marcos conceptualized and implemented her program of delivering 11 basic needs to Metro Manila residents. 1. Water. 2. Electricity. 3. Food through agriculture. 4. Clothing through cottage industries. 5. Livelihood or the economic base. 6. Medical services. 7. Education, culture, and technology. 8. Ecological balance. 9. Sports and recreation. 10. Shelter, which includes housing and land use. And 11. Mobility, which includes roads. She constructed housing units, known as the Bliss Homes, coupled with livelihood projects. This provided not only low-cost dwelling units, but also income for the less fortunate residents. Kadiwa centers and rolling stores selling prime commodities at lower prices were established and mobilized around Metro Manila's impoverished areas. Metro Aid centers were organized that provided employment for some 10,000 Metro Aids who were responsible for the cleanliness and beautification of the metropolis. Hospitals and institutions with specialization in various fields, such as the Heart Center, Kidney Center, Lung Center, the Children's Hospital, among others, were established. The Philippine General Hospital was reconstructed and expanded to extend better and more efficient service to a greater number of our Filipino people. Imelda had done more good for the Filipino people than all the presidents combined, except, of course, President Ferdinand Marcos. On the matter of sovereignty, the RP-U.S. Military Bases Agreement was signed on March 14, 1947. It provided the United States with 99 years lease to more than 20 base sites, covering some 250,000 hectares in 13 provinces. In 1959, the base's area was reduced to 117,075 hectares. President Ferdinand Marcos refused to compromise the nation's sovereignty and territorial integrity in the negotiations for the Military Bases Agreement. Thus, the Serrano-Bolin Memorandum of Lease Agreement from 99 years to 25 years. In 1976, President Marcos further reduced the base's area to 71,000 hectares. President Marcos reduced the lease agreement from 25 years to 5 years and 250,000 hectares to 10,000 hectares coverage. It also reaffirmed Philippine sovereignty over the bases, and President Marcos called it, fittingly, the final liberation of the Philippines. Following the 1983 Military Bases Agreement review, President Ronald Reagan pledged his best efforts to increase security assistance to the Philippines to $900 million for the period 1984 to 1986, $125 million to military assistance grants, $300 million in foreign military sales credits, and $475 million in economic support funds. And now the question arises: who killed Senator Benigno Aquino? This is the question that remains unanswered to this day. Here are the facts. It was Madam Imelda Marcos who facilitated his departure for the United States for that heart operation that he so badly needed. It was Mrs. Marcos who arranged everything so that his flight via Philippine Airlines to the United States was on schedule. Upon learning of his desire to come home reached President Marcos, it was again Mrs. Marcos who was sent to the United States to ask him to delay his flight home due to an intelligence report that some people wanted to do him harm. It was Mrs. Marcos who frequently had dialogue with Senator Aquino then during Mrs. Marcos's frequent trips to the United States on official basis. But all these were naught. He was being given the wrong information. The biggest lie of all was that President Marcos was dying. All the admonitions for him to delay his trip fell on deaf ears. He insisted on coming home after being fed the erroneous information that Marcos was dying. The rest, as you know, is history. A tragic mistake in judgment on his part. A tragic error that cost him his life. Who killed Ninoy? Let it be enough when we say maybe whoever did him in still walks amongst us. On the question, was Marcos a dictator? The answer, no. Marcos was a great Democrat. A dictator never calls for an election. 16 elections. 1 in November 9 of 1965. 2 November 14 of 1967. 3 November 11 of 1969. 4 November 10 of 1970. 5 November 9, 1971. 6 April 7, 1978. April 27, 1978. 8 May 7, 1979. 9 May 27, 1979. 10 January 30, 1980. 11 June 16, 1981. 12 May 17, 1982. 13 June 17, 1982. 14 May 14, 1984. 15 February 7 of 1986. Marcos, the only Philippine president, re-elected 4 times. Cory Aquino stole the presidency of 1986. Ferdinand Marcos was the duly elected president of that snap elections of that year. The winning margin of President Marcos was more than 1 million votes. Marcos was proclaimed the winner by the Philippine Congress and sworn into office by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. By a twist of misfortune, however, 2 of Marcos's trusted lieutenants turned their back against him for reasons of their own and installed instead a bogus candidate, Cory. A revolutionary government was proclaimed. Elected officials of the country were removed. Then the Constitution was changed by a so-called bunch of delegates handpicked by the usurper and company. The rest is a dark chapter in the Philippine political history. We probably have the most beautiful cultural heritage in Malakas and Maganda. It is a balanced tradition where one must be strong, the other beautiful. One provides the house and the other provides the heart that makes it a home. Thus, Ferdinand and Imelda epitomizes the cultural partnership that is akin to Malakas and Maganda. Legend has it that both souls came from one bamboo split in the middle to signify the importance of each other. Nowhere in the cultural history of any nation mirrors this idea of love and partnership than in this country, the Philippines. And finally, I quote Madam Imelda Romualdez Marcos. The only things that you keep are those you give away.